Every Sunday from September to February, around 400 million fans from around the globe come together, sit down, get a pretty disgusting amount of Uber Eats, and watch the game you and I both love, football.
You have to be kidding me. That is impossible. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Nearly 1,700 players across the 32 franchises will take the field over the course of one NFL season. But no matter what happens, there's one player on each team that seems to get the most attention. I'm of course referring to quarterback. With all this media attention, with all the praise when a team does well, with the crazy amounts of money that quarterbacks are getting and the celebrity girlfriends, comes a really unfortunate downside. And it's that quarterbacks get unfairly blamed for poor team and poor individual performance. And that is really what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. The first quarterback we're going to look at when we're talking about this is a person who I argue pretty consistently with my family and friends about. It's maybe the most polarizing and divisive player in the league today, and his name is Jalen Hurts.
He squats 600 pounds. He can, run over guys. He can throw it a mile. But his appreciation of the cerebral part of the game is what's impressive to me, and how he's taken his game to the next level. And I think the sky's the limit.
This season, Jalen Hurts has come under a lot of fire for his play by media and casual fans alike. But I think this is pretty wildly unfair. They say he's horrendous or even potentially one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And now, I've never been a Jalen Hurts fan myself, but this begs the question, where is this coming from? A few years ago, he finished second in MVP voting. In 2023, he struggled down the stretch of the season, but was still praised for his abilities. In 2024, he got his first ring, and although most people would admit he did have limitations, they still praised him as a QB with elite poise and presence who comes up in big moments and is the engine of the Eagles' offense. This year, however, has been hard, and the narrative has completely switched out of nowhere. From top 5 conversations alongside the pinnacle of the sport, even though I personally thought it was ridiculous to even have him up there, to barely top 15 conversations where people call him dog shit, mid, and claim he's pretty much the sole reason for Philly's offensive woes this season. Since you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you have pretty impeccable ball knowledge, but someone you know has probably shared this sentiment and completely switched up before your very eyes. But why? What has changed about Jalen as an individual that has led the media and fan base to completely change up on him this season, even though as a player not much has changed? Maybe it's his stats. Now I'm going to be taking a look at the last 3 years of Jalen Hurts' career statistically. The reason I'm doing the last 3 years is because I think that gives us a good idea of kind of where he's at as a player. I think 3 years is good at sample size. And because in 2022, I do believe he was a better player, and I truly do believe he has fallen off slightly since 2022, but I'm here to defend him in the right now. I do not think he's fallen off from the course of 2023 to 2025. In 2023, Jalen Hurts threw for 226 yards per game on 31 attempts per game, with a 23 to 15 touchdown to interception ratio over the course of the year, all while completing 65% of his throws. A noticeable dip for sure, especially in the interception department from 2022, but hey, we all got off years, right? Now, judging by social media and people in my circle, I'm expecting over the course of 2024 and 2025, Jalen Hurts' stats to go down. Let's see if that's true. In 2024, he threw for 193 yards on 24 attempts per game with an 18-5 ratio, with a very efficient 68% completion. With the introduction of the Barkler in 2024, the Eagles' run rate went from 50% to 58% in 2024. So that explains the dip in the stats from 2023. However, with this reduced role for Jalen Hurts, his stats have pretty much stayed the exact same in these 2 years. So far this year, he's averaging 210 yards on 28 attempts per game with a touchdown ratio of 22-6, all while completing 65% of his throws. With, again, their run rate falling back towards, again, that 50% kind of range. So when we're looking at this, you may think these look very, very similar. And you'd be right. Statistically, he's been very, very steady the past 3 years. But people may say, oh, what about his rushing? Now looking at his rushing stats, very, very similar again. Now in 2025, he has had a down year with rushing, but are we seriously attributing Jalen Hurts' fall off to 150 less rushing yards and a couple less tush pushes? His success rate is very similar. Success rate, for those who don't know, is a stat that measured what percentage of his runs result in staying on schedule. Now, I'm sure we've all heard that expression before, but what does it actually mean? It means getting 40% of the distance to a first down on first down, 60% of a distance to a first down on second down, and 100% of the distance on third. If that doesn't make much sense, just think of it as a more ethical, better way of looking at rushing efficiency rather than looking at yards per attempt. All 3 seasons staying very consistent with each other. Maybe it's his play style? People, including me, have criticized his ability to throw the rock over the middle of the field consistently. More specifically, the hardest throw in the NFL, in my opinion, throws in between the numbers that have 10 to 22 air yards on the throw. According to Next Gen Stats, in 2023, Hurts threw those balls 5.3% of the time. That ranks 162nd out of 168 qualifying quarterbacks. To qualify, you would need to have thrown 200 pass attempts in a season since 2021, and there's been 168 of those qualifying seasons since then. In 2024, he threw those balls 6% of the time, which is 153rd out of 168th. And so far this year, he's sitting at a 4.7% of attempts being those balls, being ranked 167th of 168. Another common criticism people levy against Jalen Hurts is that he throws bad picks. He doesn't throw a lot of them, but when he does, they're really downright inexcusable. Now we're going to look at one from 2023 and compare it to 2025 and see if he's regressed in this department in 2025. On this play, Jalen Hurts is going to drop back, not scan for his checkdowns, just keep his eyes locked upfield on A.J. Brown the entire time and get absolutely lurked by the Minnesota Viking defender. I understand in this situation, it's 3rd and 16, Jalen Hurts is trying to push the ball downfield, but in no circumstance is it ever acceptable to keep your eyes locked on one target the entire time, not scan for your checkdowns. Any rational quarterback here would have just checked the ball down and lived for the punt. Now is a pick he threw just a week ago at the time of recording. Versus the Chargers, Jalen Hurts is going to make the exact same mistake he did 2 years ago, and it just goes to show he's been the same player this whole time. Here, he's going to drop back, keep his eyes locked on Smitty the whole time. I am down, bang, and gives the cornerback an absolute layup on that. And he's looking at me like I made the ball. Bro, you made the throw. Here's a better angle, and it's going to show Dante Jackson just absolutely following Jalen Hurts' eyes, steps up, and that's mine, buddy. It's just a completely ill-advised throw from Hurts. Even though I hope we can all agree that statistically he's been extremely consistent and his flaws have stayed consistent. He's not developing any new flaws. He's not really developing any new skills. He's been kind of the same guy. How come Jalen is getting so much hate now more than ever? How about we move on to another controversial QB and get back to Jalen in the conclusion of this video? I'm talking about...
Yeah, they wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. That's the problem. I ain't right back. Let's go.
Since being traded to Las Vegas, Geno has been struggling mightily, and fans are letting him hear it. Now listen, I do find Geno memes funny, but I can't stand idly by and watch a solid quarterback's name get dragged through the mud. Last year, Geno had the second best season of his career, but so far this year not so much, ranking 32nd in QBR. But how? Has Geno truly fallen off? Simple answer, no he hasn't, which may come as a shock to some people who just scroll reels all day, but it's true. Last year, Geno had an extremely solid receiving core with DK and JSN. His O-line was ranked 25th in the league last year overall, and 31st against the blitz. It's hard to get an exact read of how good an O-line unit is, but just using this rough approximation of where Seattle was at last year. And he still threw for 4,300 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 15 picks, which... Okay, interceptions haven't always been Geno's strong suit. But what does this prove? It proves Geno's production wasn't inflated by his circumstances in Seattle. It was actually earned. Terrible QBs don't accidentally throw for 4,300 yards behind a bottom 5 pass blocking unit against the blitz. That only happens if the QB is consistently making the right reads pre-snap, getting the ball out on time, and minimizing damage when a play breaks down. Now, fast forward to this year, and he has the worst O-line in the league, literally no weapons besides Bowers and a baby Genty, but he hasn't fully broken out yet, and people wonder why his individual stats are down. They look at his 32nd in QBR graphic and assume he's declining, he's washed, he's whatever, but in reality, QBR is a highly sensitive to pressure rate, down and distance situations, and game script. all things largely outside of the QB's control. A few other elements we need to consider is Seattle is a great organization that almost always makes the right moves internally. They also had a great defense last year. Now to Vegas, where they have a terrible defense this year and a terrible organization. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Chip Kelly was actually calling plays that weren't in Las Vegas's playbook this year, and they were not practicing. Geno is literally being thrown to the wolves in Vegas, and you guys are blaming him. It's ridiculous. I like to think of it this way. If you took a star student from a solid school where he has tutors, where his course load is pretty light, he has free time to study areas where he struggles, and then you take that same student who's getting like an 88% and you put him in a school that is run down, has roaches, no tutors, no study time, and questions on the tests that weren't on the study guide, looking at you, Chip Kelly, obviously his grades are going to tank. Does that mean the student is bad? No, he is simply a victim of his circumstances. And if you haven't put the pieces together, the student is Geno. The circumstances for Geno are simply too great to overcome right now. He is not a worse player, he's just in a worse position. The Geno Smith and Jalen Hurts discourse recently has exposed the biggest flaw in how fans evaluate quarterbacks in today's game. When a team struggles, the quarterback becomes the easiest target, even when the problems are structural. Hurts is the same player this year putting up the same numbers. He didn't forget how to play quarterback. His protection, his run support, and his offensive play calling has slipped. When an individual performance slips, in the case of Geno, it becomes easier to pin it on them, like what we've seen this year. But he's simply never been a QB equipped to carry shit teams, like what we saw on the Jets. That's not a diss on him, it's just a reality that he's not an elite quarterback. This does not mean he's regressed on the Raiders though. What changed wasn't the player, it was the environment. It's okay not being Josh Allen or Mahomes. It's so funny to me watching people make excuses for Genti because the situation is so bad. Meanwhile, they'll tell you how Geno is the worst quarterback in the NFL. The moral of the story is that quarterbacks don't play in isolation. If we want to evaluate them honestly, we have to stop treating team failure as individual failure. Geno and Hurts both prove my point from different ends of the spectrum. One is labeled a stopgap, not a guy for the future, and the other the franchise QB. Yet both rise and fall when the structure around them isn't as good. When that structure holds, they both execute at a high level. When it doesn't, Hurts isn't the caliber of QB who's able to elevate past what is expected from him, so the team struggles. Geno isn't even the caliber quarterback to be above average on a garbage team. Numbers dip, and the blame shifts unfairly onto him because he's not the caliber of player who can maintain his production when the team fails him. This does not mean he's bad. Most quarterbacks' regression isn't even decline. It's an exposure of the environment they're being asked to survive in. Thank you for listening to my ramblings, and if you liked the video, like it.